The EU calls for respect after Trump threatens 50% tariffs. Hello, welcome back to Ruben Tech, and I want to welcome you today to this very serious individual on my left, EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic, who just warned the US that the Europeans stand ready to defend our interests. And while I would like to believe you, Maros, your recent actions by participants in the G7 have led me to believe otherwise, such as the G7 members agreeing to counter China's global trade practices, who really doesn't benefit the G7, it benefits the US. And they did this to address economic imbalances without naming China. Now, some people might call that cowardly to not name China, but I'll let you to decide. But the thing I'm going to tell you directly my opinion on is this fine young fellow over here calling G7 countries calling the Chinese products that I like to buy low value. I happen to think that they are of great value. Otherwise, I wouldn't buy them. When I go on Temu and I get items, I look at it and I'm like, wow, this is a tremendous value. This is a superb value. I would never use the term low value. But Ruben, you might say, he's an economist. And what he's talking about is the theories of economy, but that he's not. Because the simplest model, economic model there is a chart called supply and demand, where everything is a widget. There is not a low value widget and there's not a high value widget. All there is there's a supply line and there's a demand line. And where the two meet determines the price, i.e., if you have high demand and low supply, the price goes up. If you have high supply and low demand, the price goes down. We call this elasticity. And in it, there is no notion of low value widgets or high value widgets. The reason they're using this term is they're trying to demean these products. They're trying to demean this manufacturing process. But it won't work because we, the people, we are the market and we can vote with our wallets. And right now they're trying to punish us, but we don't have to let them do such. And the funny thing is about Europe also is that they're asking for respect when right over here, President Xi Jinping, his approach to global trade has often been described through three principles: mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation. I.e., President Xi is not an 8th grade schoolyard bully like President Trump. I hate to say it, he is my president. Simple matter of fact, but that is how he acts. He is absolutely, without a doubt, a bully. Okay? President Xi is not. President Xi has been saying right off the bat, mutual respect. And he said that to America. And they didn't negotiate with America. They stood up to Trump because that's what you have to do with the schoolyard bully. If you keep backing down from the bully, if you keep giving the bully your lunch money, guess what? He's only going to come back for more and more. You must stand up to the bully. And unfortunately, the EU has not done this, or at least they've said some words that they're going to do it, but their actions have not reflected those words so far. Okay? And it's funny because they have a trade partner right here who would give them this respect, who's saying, hey, you show us respect, we'll show you respect. And also we have some other beneficial things, like President Xi believes in win-win cooperation, unlike President Trump, who's telling Europe that they must just send all their factories over here. That's not a joke. We can go ahead and listen to the video right now. I will play you the clip.
What are you hoping to achieve with a 50% tariffs on the?
Well, I think this is there is no tariff because what they'll do is they'll send their companies into the U.S. and build their plant. You know, we have I guess over $12 trillion practically committed. You look at other presidents; they haven't had $1 trillion for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years. If they build their plant here, then they have no tariff at all.
Are you looking?
If they build their plant here, they will have no tariff. This is strong arm negotiation. So you're not going to have any factories, any plants over in Europe. You need to build them all here. When the stock market heard this, what happened to European auto manufacturers? They just went off an absolute cliff. This would be devastating for Europe. And as we can see from this chart right here, the EU has a trade surplus with the United States on order of some $300 billion. So yes, it would be painful for the EU to decouple from Trump, but let me tell you something. He is just going to keep turning the screws if you give him anything. We know this because that's been US policy, not just Trump's. We can see in this article here, Deconstructing the Obvious, Seymour Hersh on why the US blew up Nord Stream, which, by the way, is a hilarious topic, not the fact that they actually did this, but that anybody would believe that the US didn't do it. In fact, the US said we were going to do it multiple times. Even President Joe Biden said that it would happen, but yet the moment that it happened, all of a sudden we didn't do it. You can read the article right here. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland told reporters, "I want to be very clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine one way or another, Nord Stream will not move forward." Her remarks were echoed just days later by President Joe Biden, US President Joe Biden. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine. There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. I promise you, we'll be able to do it. And then what happened? Russia invaded, Nord Stream was blown up, and the US said, hey, it was Russia that did it. And that to me is very funny. But what's not funny is that this has been US policy for quite some time. Look at Condoleezza Rice right here when she noted back in 2014, you want to change the structure of energy dependence. You want to depend more on a North American energy platform. She's talking Europe. You want to have pipelines that don't go through Ukraine and Russia. For years, we've tried to get the Europeans interested in different pipeline routes. It's time to do that. So the United States, one way or another, no matter what, they were going to get the EU addicted to United States LNG, and they succeeded. We can see from over here that the US right now is supplying 45% right here, has become the EU's biggest LNG supplier, providing 45% of the bloc's LNG needs last year. So the US went out and accomplished this goal. And what kind of power does this give the US? Well, it gives them a tremendous amount of power and influence over Europe, because this is how Europe heats itself. Imagine that you're in the winter and you're debating with, or you're negotiating with Donald Trump. Would you put it past him to say, hey, we're going to turn off your heat supply? I, for one, would absolutely not. And then we can see down here, some people say, hey, Europe is still buying from Russia. They absolutely are. And in fact, the bloc actually reached record levels of LNG production, LNG purchases from Russia, but this was only through cargo shipments. This is not as efficient, this is not as fast, and this is not as cheap as what can go through the pipeline. But if that's not enough for you, let's go back to the BBC article right here, where you can see Stephen Miller, who wrote the infamous Project 2025, a former economic advisor to Trump who works for conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation. He told the BBC directly, what may happen in Europe is that we may try to negotiate individually with countries in Europe, i.e., they want to break the European bloc. He added that in his opinion, Trump's ultimate aim is really to decouple not just the US, but the whole world from Chinese influence, which would be a very good thing if he could pull it off. The question to ask would be, why is that a good thing? But before we go to that, let's again examine Europe. Here we're seeing that the Europeans, they have gained some strength through the EU bloc. And Stephen Moore and Trump do not like that. Because even though they're dependent on our LNG, we can simply see that as a bloc, they have a lot of power. If we come down to here, it's China, EU, and United States. Top three in both exports and in imports. And this has got to worry the US.
I've said before, EU has a collective action problem here. It's 27 countries, but they're being represented by this one group in Brussels.
The EU has a collective problem here. The collective problem is that united you're stronger and divided you're weaker. Simply put, you divide your enemy and then you destroy them. Or at least in this instance, we're talking about putting them underneath their thumb. But why, you may ask, why would they want to be put under the thumb? Well, it came back to what Stephen said in his piece to the BBC, and that is that you are going to be used as a pawn in our war against China. We can see right here that the Dutch government fears ASML will become a weapon in a US-China trade war. But the simple fact is that ASML already is. ASML has been banned from doing any business with China on their advanced EUV lithography machines. ASML literally controls this industry. As of right now, they're the only company in the entire world that can build such machines. With a market value of 270 billion euros, the company is crucial to the Dutch economy and is at risk of being dragged into the economic conflict between the two world powers. This is inaccurate. They're already dragged into conflict, and their CEO has stated many times that he is very tired of it. He doesn't want to be in the middle of these export controls, but he has no choice, which is kind of funny because right here it says that they are a Dutch company. So why does the United States use them as a bargaining chip against their adversaries? So my European counterparts, today we covered this topic and I don't even think I made any insulting comments. That's got to be a first for me. I do want to hear your opinions down below. Are you in agreement with Trump? Do you think that partnering with the United States in order to dominate the entire world, even if you're a pawn, is in your best interest? Or do you think that perhaps maybe it would be better if the world was a little bit more balanced out? Let me know what you think down below. I believe we have the best comment section of all YouTube. I have learned so much from you guys and I really appreciate it. Also, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you can afford it, we have memberships available for the price of a cup of coffee. With that said, all of you out there, have a great weekend.